teams we cover in Kansas City, it was the ultimate challenge, being down 10 points midway through the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl, or by 9 points with 2 minutes remaining in the NCAA championship game. Now the challenge is different, bigger. Seasons and championships have been disrupted or canceled. What are the athletes doing during the coronavirus pandemic? It's Monday, March 23rd, and on today's SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star Sports podcast, Sam Mellinger and Sam McDowell spoke to what's happening with athletes in our region. They also talked about what some Kansas City folks, probably big fans of the Chiefs, Royals, Sporting KC, and the colleges, are doing to help their hometown manage through this health crisis. Melly and Sam Mack and so many others at the Star have written some amazing stories. Some of them are part of the show notes here. So, here are Sam Mellinger and Sam McDowell talking about what they've seen and written over the past few days. I'm Blair Kirchhoff, and toward the end, I asked them about the switch they've made from writing about spring training and free agency to what they're doing now. Here we go. I'll tell you guys, I can remember in the old Star building, if you went upstairs, kind of around the corner from the cafeteria, there was we have the framed Norman Rockwell photo of, remember the guy, the worker rolling up his sleeves, holding some blueprints in his hand, and it was the spirit of Kansas City. And I thought about that image over the last, 10, 12 days. And as I go around town, and also as I read stories in the Star about how Kansas City is helping manage this coronavirus crisis. Look, I think every city prides itself in being, a good place and a helpful place and pulling together in times of need. But I know that both of you guys experienced firsthand and witnessed some of those moments. Sam McDowell, let's start with you. You had some. We kind of went on a little tour of this last week and wrote about it, and we will, of course, link to the story here in the in the show notes. But you came across some pretty interesting people doing some pretty great things. Why don't you start by telling us about Mark Gonzalez?
Yeah, Mark Gonzalez, actually a friend of Lisa Lopez, who works in our newsroom, and it seems like everybody, it's sort of a Kevin Bacon deal, is somehow knows Lisa Lopez.
Yeah.
But he's a guy that we should probably start by telling a little bit about his childhood. He's a guy that grew up one of 3 kids, a single mom, and said that she didn't have a car. The bus didn't stop all that close to their place in the quote unquote Little Mexico district of Kansas City. So she got home late from work because she walked to work, and she'd get home so late that it was after the kids' bedtime, and they'd often go without dinner. So he taught himself to cook on the nights that she was home. He would watch her cook and figured out how to make tacos, burritos, enchiladas, and that sort of thing. And so he made a business out of it. And obviously, it's a sort of a street taco business, goes to events, weddings, things like that. And obviously all that's shut down. But he's just a guy that sort of has never lost that impulse to try and do whatever he can to help. And what he can do right now is make these burritos that he's been making and just deliver them to people right now that are too afraid to leave their house, that are too susceptible to the virus, or to the worst parts of the virus anyway. So people like the elderly, and he's just delivering them to people's houses. It's a really cool thing. He's doing a big load today as we talk on Monday.
That's great. That's great. And we're going to talk about what some of the athletes, the professional athletes in Kansas City, are doing to help this cause. But I was just really struck by the, just folks, right? Just people like us who
Absolutely.
aren't professional athletes. And of course, delivery of food is center to a lot of this. And Melly, I was just struck by the story that you wrote, that you followed a young woman who was doing some volunteer work for the Shepherd Center, and the story that you wrote and the image that was captured. I don't know if it was it Tammy or Jill? I don't know who took the photo.
Rich Sugg, yeah.
Was it Rich Sugg? Okay, great photo of keeping a little social distancing, I guess, at the door. But T Sexton was, just doing her thing.
She is a dang angel. I mean, I don't, I don't want to make too much of this or sound like I'm trying to exaggerate the point. I promise you, I'm not. You meet certain people who just like give off this vibe of complete selflessness and just pure of heart and intentions, and that's T Sexton. The way she talks, the way she describes her motivations for doing these things. I mean, she maybe set the scene a little bit. She's a volunteer. She's the kitchen coordinator for Shepherd Center, which provides meals for about 50 elderly folks around town who are homebound without a way to get regular food otherwise. And watching her go up to, in particular, this one door where there's this woman that she obviously knows, and is obviously delivered meals to before. There's a big smile on this woman's face, Mrs. Montaro. I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. And it really looked like she wanted a hug, and it really looked like T gives her that hug, on a normal day, but she couldn't, and she stepped back away and just said, "I can't." But here's your food, and they talked for a little bit, and me and Rich talked to Miss Montaro afterward, and I didn't think about this part of it. I mean, these people obviously need the food. We all need food to eat. We need, sustenance in our lives. But she has a lot of medication. She has arthritis, bad arthritis, and she takes some pills for it, and she can't take that medication until she has food. So it's like these people are depending on this service for, more ways than you might even, or that I even thought about at the on the surface. And for them for a lot of them, it's the only human interaction that they get in a week, and there's obviously stresses on that kind of thing right now. Miss Montaro, I didn't ask her age, but she's probably in her 80s, certainly at least in her 70s, and would be absolutely classified as vulnerable. Or the vulnerable population. So it's just it was really cool to know that those kinds of services are continuing, and that the people who are making sure that they're taking extra steps to make sure it does continue. And I thought this was really cool too. I got an email from Janet Baker, who's the executive director at the Shepherd Center, and she said the email came in. I don't think the story was up for more than a few hours. And she said that they'd gotten $1,500 worth of donations already, just in, it was probably 3 hours or so that the story had been up. And I think you said this, Blair, like Kansas City, we can think that we're unique, but I do know that there's a lot of good people everywhere. But Kansas City is a place that tends to rally for its own. It's just really cool to see that up front and personal.
And that's one of the reasons I think it's pretty neat that that both of you guys are working on stories outside of sports, and because I got to thinking of all the people that work in the sports department. I think this is right. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you two are the only ones from here who grew up here. Quickly going down. I think that's right. Now, look, I've been here for 30 years, and others have been here quite a long time. But you guys are from here, and I can't think of two better people to talk to about what this town's about and what this region is about. And gosh, we in better times we have fun talking about our differences and the state line and
Right.
and border war and all that. But I don't see any of that. I don't I don't come close to seeing any of that in these times.
It's amazing how many people have just posted something on. I think we probably all belong to some sort of Facebook group that has like a neighborhood association or things like that. I know I am, and a lot of my friends are. And it's just amazing how many people are just posting messages, just how can I help? Like, I want to do something to help. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I mean, I know my neighborhood is just doing sidewalk chalk to give the kids something to look forward to seeing, or we've got a picture of a rainbow in our doorway to try and get people or kids again, like a task to try and count that sort of thing. It's just like you just want to do something to try and help people out. And I think both you, just to echo what both you guys said, I don't know whether that's because this is Kansas City and that's unique because I did grow up here, but that certainly has always seemed like it's at least ingrained in Kansas City.
Yeah, I'll tell you something else, Sam. In that story that you wrote, where you talked to several people, I was struck by the vignette about I hope I'm pronouncing the name right, the Denny family, the father and his
Yeah,
three kids who took him around,
exactly.
and yeah, and the one quote that really stood out to me was the dad saying, "This is what he wants his kids to see. This is we're in times of trouble, and and this is what you can do to help. This is how you can participate in a good cause." And that just, I don't know. Sam's got two kids. I've got three, grown kids, and Sam McDowell, you're about to become a father. I'll tell you, that's the type of quote that just gets to you.
Yeah, I mean, what was so impressive about that guy, Rico, he goes by, his name's Clinton, but he goes by Rico. I mean, he's a barber in Raytown. I don't know what his salary is, but I'm guessing a barber in Raytown isn't, reeling in six figures or anything like that. And he still is just paying out of his own pocket to deliver groceries to the elderly, and something that completely came out of his own volition. He wasn't asked to do it or anything like that. And you're exactly right. It was because he wanted to pass something like that on to his kids.
Yeah, look, it's something. Look, hey, we're sports writers, and we cover sports. There's a lot going on with professional athletes here in town. Nothing's happening on the field or the courts, sadly, but stuff's going on in other ways. I see where the Chiefs put out a tweet today. We're recording this on Monday. That Travis Kelce, Tyrann Mathieu, Tyreek Hill were all, there were shots of them with delivering food. They're big into harvesters. I know that's a big partner for the Chiefs. And I think Will Shields was also part of the group of photos that I saw, the Hall of Famer, former Chief. And what other things have you guys seen with Kansas City athletes kind of trying to do their part where they can around here to help people feel better?
I saw the Royals sent out a video. Did you guys see this? Where I think Salvador Perez started it with washing his hands while singing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" in the very Salvi voice, and that seems to have taken off. And look, I don't know how many people aren't washing their hands and are going to watch that video and start because of that. If it's 10 people, that makes something of a difference. But I think it's just there is something, it's not reassuring, but there's something nice about just seeing the athletes that you follow on the field accept and be part of the community that you live in. And I think for the most part, there's more Chiefs players that live in town than Royals, but there's still a sense of whenever an athlete can make it obvious that they feel a part of this community, wherever they are, whether it's Kansas City or Indianapolis or Houston or New York or LA or whatever. I do think it's better for everybody. Like, this is a weird thing to believe as a sports writer, but I think sometimes we make too much of athletes, that we don't need an athlete's opinion on politics or whatever. I mean, they're free to give it, but the rest of us can be free to ignore it. But there is a platform there, and there is some value in seeing these people with huge followings and with a lot of respect around town use it in the right ways.
I saw where Mitch Schwartz, the All-Pro offensive lineman, did a Twitter Q&A on Sunday, and that's look, that's not delivering food or anything like that. But I look, we're all we're all kind of shut in, right?
Sure.
We're all
Right.
and it got great response. He called it a Q&A, a quarantine and answer session, and answered a ton of questions. I
Uh-huh.
mean, a ton, and most of them I think about food. As
Yeah.
much as many about food as football, which I thought was pretty neat.
The one, can I interject real quick? The
Sure.
one, he's done that a few times, and they're all great. Mitch is smart, and he's funny. He's insightful. He's all these things. The one question and answer there, or quarantine and answer, I guess, that he said was, somebody asked him something about Mahomes, like, what's a story that you have of something that he did sort of behind the scenes? Did you see this? And he said that the night that Patrick won the MVP, that it was announced that he won the MVP, Mitch sent him a quick little text about congratulations, whatever, and he said within 2 minutes Mahomes wrote back and said thank you, and was gracious, and just making the point that in that moment, in those 2 minutes, Mahomes must have gotten 100 texts at least, and to sit there and not just a teammate but an offensive lineman. To say, make it a priority to say, thanks, man, you're part of this too. That it's those, there's a million little things like that, but those are the types of things that, his teammates love so much about him. And it's a cool thing to be able to open the door and let fans see that as well.
Absolutely. And speaking of the Chiefs, it's not just the players. Sam McDowell, you caught up with BJ Kissel, our friend, and gosh, we've all known BJ for such a long time, and he spearheaded a kind of a food drive himself, which sort of just grew organically and turned into something special.
Yeah, unbeknownst to him, he was spearheading a movement
Right.
because he just wanted to feed like one shift of nurses at one hospital by him by catering Jack Sack to him. And he basically posted on Facebook specifically just to try and get the question answered as far as, is this allowed? Because our hospital's allowing in food, outside food right now, and how would this work? And when he did that, somebody who answered also said, hey, I want to donate a couple $100 to this cause. So his wife said, why don't you put it on Twitter too, that you're doing this? And we all know he's got a huge following on his Chiefs account on Twitter, but he wanted to keep this personally separate from what the Chiefs are doing. And I think he's got maybe 5,000 followers, and still within 4 days, he had $15,000 in donations. And I haven't checked it today, but I wouldn't be surprised if that number is almost doubled. There's some organizations that wanted to get involved. He was combining with another effort. And so just on Friday, so 4 days ago, they delivered food to 10 different hospitals. And I know you guys are probably the same way. I certainly have some friends who are nurses, a sister-in-law who works at a hospital. And I mean, those people are at the forefront of all of our thoughts because it's tough to protect themselves with the shortage of supplies right now. So it's a really cool thing and a cool idea because we're all thinking of different people affected by this. And to be able to do something to help some of those people is a really cool thing.
Yeah. Hey, I know we talked a little bit about this in a video conference that we had among the sports staff today. I heard it was our buddy Pete Gradhoff who said that he heard where Royals fans were putting together some sort of funding for adopting a Royals minor leaguer, because we know that those guys, if you're not on the 40-man roster, you don't have the same resources, financial resources as those players who are on the 40-man. And the other thing we talked about that I thought was interesting, and stories that we're pursuing, is these players are who are missing their season now, but having to somehow stay in shape and be ready for when the season resumes. And I guess I didn't think about it, Sam McDowell, in the way that you do, because you covered Sporting Kansas City for so long, but that's a pretty big challenge for those guys right now.
Yeah, that's what struck me most about that. I mean, certainly every athlete is going through that trial right now. I mean, football players at some point pretty soon. I mean, this is the time where they're trying to work out and try to target something very specific. We know last year Mahomes was trying to improve his body to be less susceptible to injury. We know a year before he was trying to lose some weight. So I know football players are going through stuff. Basketball players are certainly doing some things. But when soccer comes back, whenever that is, those guys have to be in such amazing fitness that I've always thought as peak fitness as perhaps any other sport. But that takes them 6 weeks of a preseason to get to that point and be ready for the season. And to suddenly not be able to train because MLS has banned training during this time, to not even be able to train. I'm curious to figure out, and we're going to be working on a story this week to exactly what they're doing to try and stay in shape for when the season does return.
I think about baseball players and timing, right?
For sure.
With hitters and especially if gathering places like Mac and Sites or Building Champions, the places around town are having to limit people because of orders, and I don't know how that's going to affect them. And will they resume spring training, or will it be some sort of when this comes back? How will that look? I don't think any of us know the answer to that now, do we?
I think they're going to have to do some sort of spring training again because their season hasn't started. I think the difference in MLS is their season started. It would be tough to go back and do a couple of exhibitions. I don't know whether Sam knows more about that, but I find it difficult to believe that they would just get right into playing games.
No, I agree. I would think that there'd have to be at least 2 weeks, after whether it's a CDC or whoever says, okay, big groups are allowed again. I would think this is one of those things that owners and players could agree on, just for the betterment of the quality of the product that they would need maybe you could get through in 10 days, give every starting pitcher 2 starts. But I would think you'd need about 2 weeks before guys would be comfortable, competing in games that matter.
Right. Hey, we mentioned a little while ago Mitch Schwartz doing his Q&A on Twitter. Did either of you guys check out what Bill Self was doing on Sunday?
That was great. I looked through it a little bit. I didn't watch the game, but there was some great insight in there. Everything from, kind of, and especially in the spirit of it, kind of jokingly criticizing guys. You got to make that shot, stuff like that. Bad call.
He said Brandon Rush actually dribbled with his left hand once. I thought that was the funniest thing he said.
Yeah. And there was also just little stuff like, God, college basketball was so good that year. We were the number 1 seed, but we were the lowest rated number 1 seed. So that meant we got the worst hotel out of 4 teams. I wonder what the hotel was. But it was great. It was really.
It was an Airbnb shared with Herbie, I think, probably.
With just all the pancakes delivered that you could eat. But it really, for those of us that, Blair, you're like this too, like that have talked with Bill, extensively and sometimes casually or whatever. It really felt like you were just like you were next to him on the couch, and this is just what was coming out of his mouth.
Yeah, it was entertaining. I didn't realize he was doing it until I think Gary Bedore tweeted it, and so I turned the game on and followed it along with, and not just he, but some former players got involved too. Scott Pollard and Mario Chalmers, I think, pitched in, and it was entertaining. I know the Kansas fans were pretty stoked about it. But I'll tell you, so I watched most of it, and I'd seen the game. I've watched replays of the game. I couldn't bring myself to spending a whole lot of time on the other championship games that CBS, was felt compelled to show on Sunday, and I imagine they're going to continue to do that. What else are they going to show on, on Sundays these days and in sports? So, hey, so what? I wanted to ask both you guys. We're not writing anything about competition and games, but and you guys have also stepped away from sports writing for a time. What's that been like? And is it? I guess you have to apply a lot of the same, fundamentals, right? And thoughts and ideas, just not without without balls and sticks and other sporting apparatus to write about.
Well, for me, it sounds weird because this is literally like all I've ever done. But I haven't felt like it's that much of a change. Like, and what I mean by that is I've always been a sports writer, but in my mind, I've always just been writing about what I'm interested in because what I'm interested in is sports, right? And, this last week, 2 weeks, whatever, largely what I'm interested in is how people are dealing with, this global pandemic and this thing that seems to, worsen every day. And especially with no sports going on, it's been a natural thing. And, and I feel like I've been lucky to be, like Sam has, writing about some of the good parts, some of the people kind of coming together to try and get through this as well as possible. And I think you guys would all agree with this, is that, there's some of our job that is like breaking down film and, writing about whether Brad Keller is repeating his mechanics and stuff like that. But at the base of it, you're writing about people. And, I think that's what I'm trying to do now as well. It's just, people that aren't professional.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo the last part of what Sam said. I mean, the part of my job that I've always really embraced the most is telling people's stories, more than the X's and O's of the game.
Yeah.
And so in that manner, it still feels very similar to what it was. I mean, even on the Chiefs beat, I try, and we all do this, to tell the people stories on the Chiefs beat as much as anything else. And it doesn't really feel all that big of a shift, and I've certainly embraced it because it's the biggest story, not just going on in Kansas City, but in the world right now. So I guess why wouldn't you want to be a part of it if asked?
I'll tell you. So, like many other businesses, I mean, who doesn't have a Slack channel anymore? And of course, we have Slack channels and several, depending on what department you work in. And but I've been going on our breaking news Slack channel at the Star, and what I see there just makes me so proud, and it amazes me too. I'll see reporters and editors who start having conversations early in the morning, very early in the morning, and then they're working throughout the day, and then at the end of the day, whatever that time is for them, they'll slack, and I'm heading home now, and then there'll be a pause for about a half an hour, and then they'll get right back on Slack and say, okay, what else do you need me to do? And and that goes on into the evening. And I just want to say, I think the work that you guys have done and the entire Star, Kansas City Star, has just been fantastic. And I've never believed more than I have in these last 2 weeks or so that local news is a lifeline for a lot of people. It just is. It is trustworthy. It is accurate. It is edited. It goes through a lot of filters before it's out there and put out there. And it's just none of us wants this to happen. None of us wants to be a part of this. Thursday's opening day, supposed to be at Kauffman Stadium. We'd all rather be there. But look, I find myself on our website and reading our print product, spending more time than ever doing that. And listen, I think that's true of all local news, and I think many national outlets are doing a great job. But I just am extremely proud of the work that the Star has been doing here.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really a way to say it any better than that. But I will be the guy to add the plug, because our readership metrics show that everybody is consuming what the news side's writing, and Sam and I have been a part of that, but probably a small part of it when you look at the sheer amount of coverage that there's been from our news reporters. And I certainly hope people realize now that they need us in the community. And everybody knows what newspapers are going through right now, and it certainly would be great for those that can, because we certainly know that the people have been financially affected by this, but to subscribe, because we're doing this work all year round, and we've attacked this because it's the news going on right now. But our staff and that news side puts out incredible work all 12 months of the year.
And it's there's no charge right now for the online product. As with the case with most newspapers, I know I don't have a subscription to to the New York Times, but it's been free for the last few days, and most newspapers, I believe, have taken down their paywalls, as have the Star and all McClatchy newspapers. That's how important this is, and I think in times of of an emergency or crisis, that should be the case, and it is the case with the Star and other McClatchy newspapers. So. Okay, guys. Hey, I appreciate you spending some time talking about this. It's a little bit of a departure from our usual conversation topics, but thanks for doing it, and I'll talk to both of you guys again soon. Hey, it's Blair. Hey, we have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners: unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns we have to offer. And it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. For your convenience, your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. A lot of subscription services won't tell you that. They'll just sneak it on there. We just told you. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. That'll do it for today. Again, links to the stories we discussed can be found in the show notes and on kansascity.com. And as mentioned earlier, there's no paywall for the website, so please stay informed and up to date on kansascity.com. Thanks to producers Derek Donovan, Savannah Smith, Randy Mason, Beth Welsh, Jeff Rosen, and Chris Fickett. Tip of the hat to Sam Mellinger and Sam McDowell for sharing their thoughts today. We'll be back on Tuesday for another SportsBeat KC. Thanks for listening.